What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the PT Coffee Cast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Feeling good. This is my third coffee. No food this morning.
Oh,
So
the ratio.
we'll see how this goes, right?
Yeah. The 200th episode is going to be fire since you've had no food and only 3 coffees.
200 episodes.
It's pretty wild. It's definitely more than that. Like, listen, math isn't my strong suit, so I know like we've had other episodes, like we had the Espresso Cast episodes that we didn't have as like episode numbers, and I've probably like skipped a couple here and there, but we'll call it 200, which is like pretty wild to think about.
It's pretty cool. And 199, we made a big announcement too.
Yeah, if you guys missed it and you didn't listen to our most recent episode, we announced the Movement Mentorship, which is going to be launching our first cohort in April. So we have a wait list for you guys to join if you're interested. That episode takes you through what the mentorship is going to consist of. And then if you sign up for the wait list, you'll get a little more info over the next couple of weeks as to what you can expect. But yeah, we're super pumped to have that off the ground.
Yeah, really fired up to see people already signing up for the wait list.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And just showing some of our team some of the content and how pumped they have been to see it is just makes me pumped.
Yeah, so if you guys want to sign up for that, check the link in the bio on Instagram or in the show notes below. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at PT Coffee Cast. You're subscribed to the podcast on your podcasting platforms. And if you want some of our other sweet resources we have, you can also get our 3 why ebook, and then also our sales tips to help with client outcomes is there for you as well. But for today, we're going to dive into a continuation kind of an episode that we did not too long ago. I think it was episode 197.
I think 196.
196.
It was the tools in the toolbox one.
Right, how that can be a negative, and then we talked a little bit about like the micro and the macro of the initial assessment and the purpose of it. So this is going to be like a little bit of a continuation of that, focusing on more the follow-up session. So your first follow-up session, and then even more specifically the start of that session. And we are going to hit on, 3 key things that we make sure that we do on those sessions that we think are valuable. We'll share it with you guys, see what you think. As always, let us know if you think it's valuable or if you think it's absolute trash. We're open to hearing your feedback.
Come on now.
But yeah, so for that follow-up session, the start of the session, what we like to focus on are 3 things: reconnecting, reassessing, and setting expectations. Those are kind of the 3 things that we have found to be super important to focus on to just get a good experience with your client on that first follow-up session. So why don't we kick it off with reconnecting? Maybe I'll have you take it away a little bit and give us your thoughts on that, how you go about reconnecting with your client.
We always reconnect a little at the start of the podcast episode, right?
I know, totally. Just trying to like build rapport with me.
Exactly. You're tough shell to crack. I don't know what the term is, or the phrase is.
You got it. Well, yeah, something like that.
But yeah, so this is just a framework that really helps to give you some guidance, some structure. There's tons of individuality that you can implement with these sort of 3 steps. But that reconnecting step is really important because a lot of times in the initial assessment, you're starting to build trust, but what you don't want to do is spend a ton of time getting to know somebody, like fostering a relationship with them on day 1, and then sort of just like throw that by the wayside for the rest of the time. Like, you want to keep building on that relationship. And oftentimes there's people that do take a bit to like connect with. And so you've got to keep kind of taking cracks at it and see what kind of hits. But that first part is just about reconnecting. And that means talking about unrelated things,
Like not clinical related.
Not clinical related. I think this is underrated, in terms of the value to the overall experience and outcome. Just how much you spend just getting to know the person versus just their injury.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're gonna pull out of like that, 5 to 10 minute interaction that can be helpful for the outcome of the client. Whether you can bring it and tie it into what you're doing clinically, or whether you're not doing that and you're just building trust and connection with someone. People who like you more, connect with you more, trust you more, are going to stick with you for longer periods of time. So even if there's nothing that you can use in that kind of interaction that can be reinforced clinically, you're still setting yourself up for good success with having that client follow through the full life cycle of their time with you.
Exactly. And you may not, I think you shouldn't be afraid of having a 10-minute conversation, right? Even if you only have 30-minute sessions. Obviously, you can't necessarily do that every time, or you might have to combine some other things within that just basically conversation. But sometimes that can really change the game in terms of your level of trust, your ability to implement some of the things. So I think just not being afraid if you're like, oh, this is taking 10 minutes, we only have 20 minutes. That can be one of the game changers of your entire life cycle with that client. So try not to be afraid of leaning into that a bit, I think.
For sure. And there's ways that you can navigate that. Let's say you don't have a ton of time, right? You don't have an hour-long session. You have a 30-minute follow-up. And, you're looking kind of peering at your watch or whatever, and you notice this is taking a little bit of time, or your kind of mental clock is ticking. I've learned this along the way from other people. It's you can be like, hey, listen, this has been super valuable for me to understand this about you and what you're doing. Do you want to continue to dive down this and have a conversation? Or do you want to, move forward and get into some of the other things that we have planned that we can focus on? And almost just asking them, right? Because that's also important. And if they're like, yeah, I just want to keep sharing this with you, right? Or if they think it's important to them to continue to share it, then you can continue to share it with, they can continue to share it with you. And then a lot of times people will be like, yeah, no, let's move forward. And then you can continue to have that interaction while you're moving forward with the session. It's kind of like the art of the interaction, to try to keep it moving if you do need to keep it moving. But offering that up to them to make a choice puts a lot of autonomy in their hands, which I think is always a good thing.
Yeah, I like that thought.
Yeah, and before we move on, just one thing that Will kind of touched on is these things take time. We underestimate how long it takes to build trust and to create a relationship and connection. I was working with a client where it was probably our fourth or fifth session into our time together, and he trusted me, we were making progress, but that connection wasn't really there. When you hit it off with people and you guys are super aligned, and I was always trying to figure out how can I continue to learn more about this person. And then that session I noticed that he came in a Tesla, and I was like, oh, nice. So I asked him about it. And the moment I asked him about his Tesla, his eyes just lit up and he just went off. And then I was like, there we go. Tesla. That's how we connected. And then from then on, we were boys. He was telling me lots of stuff. He opened up. So I think you always are trying to find ways to pull on the thread to uncover those things.
Long story short, Dalton has a Tesla now.
Yeah. I did ask him if you'd take me for a ride in it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But I never got it. Yeah, then let's move on to the next one. So then, after you're kind of reconnecting, we're going to reassess, right? So obviously, like from a clinical standpoint, we need to reassess to see like where's the client at, how did they respond to the stuff that we implemented on the initial assessment? Has there been any change in, things like range of motion or strength or pain levels, etc. So clinically, it's just really important that we're doing those things. But I think at like a more of a macro level of that situation is just like also making the client feel like you're considering them and like you're paying attention to what their issues are. You're kind of bringing that back up. You're not like blowing past that, and you're taking the time to highlight the fact that you're like checking in on these things and reassessing them, so that they feel like you're giving them the time, right? Or that it's important.
And you're checking back in with the plan, like, oh, okay, so we're checking in with the actual issue at hand, right? And we're seeing where it's at, right, along that sort of continuum. I think that's super important because oftentimes a big reason, that people will fall off is because they feel like the level of like effort invested into their situation has slowly started to dwindle.
Yeah, effort or even just like attention to the issue. Like I know in the past for myself, when I had clients fall off, it was like I was not necessarily paying close enough attention to the issue or not realizing how important it was for me to really address that with the client. And then they felt like I wasn't caring for them in a sense, and they started to like kind of dwindle off. So I think you can use that reassessment as a way to like show that you're still paying attention to their issue, and then always tying it back into the plan and in like how what you're going to do is going to move them towards like their goals that they've set out with you.
Absolutely, which probably leads pretty smoothly into the last component.
Yeah, the last component being the other thing I want to touch on before we transition to that is just like we talk about this a lot in the initial assessment, to not feel like you need to go through everything, and that you can always use the the follow-up sessions as a way to like test those things out. So I think again, that's another opportunity if you had not gotten through anything in the initial assessment, or you forgot to do something, which we all forget to do, like you can come back to it on that first session and use that as an opportunity.
Kind of like we just did there.
Yeah.
I was like too caffeinated,
yeah,
rushed you along too quick, and you're like, whoa.
Well, hold up, bro. Let's reassess.
Hang on. Thanks.
Now we can move on.
Yeah. No, but that is a good point, though. I don't think we should ignore that, because like especially in school, you sort of are trained to be like get through everything, and often you just don't. And in reality, there's no way you can, and you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you never check in with something that maybe you missed. You make a note, you go into it the next time, and that's what that reassessment allows you to do, is maybe explore something that didn't come up day one or the previous sessions.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last one is just setting expectations. So setting expectations for that session that you're about to go into is always important. I just think I've learned more and more that the amount of uncertainty that you can take away from someone, the better it goes. So like, when someone comes in for their first session, again, they're still trying to like figure out what this really is, especially if they haven't been exposed to physio before. They're trying to, they're just getting used to you and connecting with you. When you don't know what's coming next, it can be a little bit anxiety provoking. People feel a little bit more like uncomfortable. So trying to reduce that by setting expectations of like, hey, what we're going to focus on today is this. What that's going to look like is we're going to do this, this, and this. And then at the end, we'll sit down, we'll summarize that, and then we'll set up some of the things I want you to focus on moving forward. And that's like a great way to just like take away some of that that anxiety that someone might have, or that uncertainty of what we're actually going to do in the session. And then like when it shows up, they're like, oh, okay, this is what we talked about.
And something we always come back to is like always bringing it back to the plan.
Right.
Where are you in your plan that you had set out? Has anything changed? And then setting the session where you are. It just helps them kind of have like a compass for where they are, and it shows that you are considering that, right? You're not lost on the bigger picture of what you're working towards.
Yeah. I think that basically summarizes setting expectations.
That's it.
Yeah.
You want to do a little recap?
A little recap action?
Little
Yeah,
recap?
I always like to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to recap. So the 3 things that we like to focus on for the follow-up session, and in even more micro, the start of the follow-up session is reconnecting, reassessing, and setting expectations. So writing those 3 things down on your notebook or on your laptop before you head in for that follow-up session is a great way just to like trigger your mind, like, okay, reconnect, boom. You know, maybe it's 2 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it ends up being 15 minutes. It's kind of like let the client, let the situation take it where it needs to go, because that is a very important aspect of it. Then the reassessing is obviously just making sure you're doing your clinical job, but even bigger than that, it's making the client feel like you're paying attention to their problem, and then always tying it back into how that is going to help them get to their goals, which kind of goes into that setting expectations where you're going to let people know, hey, this is what we're going to work on for this session, and this is how it relates to your goal, so they understand that you're always trying to kind of move them towards that.
That was beautiful.
Thanks, man. I've had 200 episodes to practice.
Yeah. Nice, man.
But guys, that's all we got for today. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Make sure that you are following us on Instagram at PT Coffee Cast. We did launch our mentorship. So again, if you haven't listened to that episode, check out episode 199. That'll give you all the details on what's included, as well as our waitlist is open. So you can sign up through the link in our bio on Instagram or in the show notes below. We should have mentioned this at the top of the show, but if you are still sticking with us, we are putting episodes on YouTube now, so you can see our pretty little faces. I know we've talked about doing this before, and we've fallen off, but I'm committed to getting those episodes up there. So you'll see that we had put up episode 198 and 199 are available on YouTube, so you can see us in the flesh. And then this episode is also available on YouTube, so you can check that out. So make sure you subscribe with us there. That is all I got, guys. As always, make sure you stay caffeinated. Peace.